So, welcome everyone to the last event at the DesignOps conference. We thank you all for taking the time to come today, and we hope you're going to enjoy this last segment. Before I start, I'd like to say thank you to Henry Stewart for bringing me down to moderate this panel. Thank you, Vix, and everything. We have some really great guests today, and you'll get to know them as we start to talk. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Naresh Shan. I'm the founder of DesignOps Aligned and the host of the DesignOps Aligned podcast. I hope some of you watch it. I think it's a really great show personally. So anyway, we're going to cover a lot of topics today, and we're going to approach it in a different way than these usual moderate panels. So one of the key things we want to achieve today is ensuring that you find value in this session. So it's going to be very interactive. And yeah, with any large group, there's always a large group syndrome. So, we don't want it to be quiet. We want you to feel comfortable, ask questions. So before I start, everyone stand up, please. Let's get everyone stand up. Before we begin, raise your hands in the air. Make some noise, Oh, come on, you can do better than that. You can do better, come on. Yeah, that's it. All right, now turn to the person on your right, shake hands, introduce yourself. Wait, don't just say your name. Say, we're in this together. So, hey, do this behind. Do this, everyone on this side, please. Yeah, we're good. All right, still stay standing. I want to ask a few questions before we start. Please stay standing if your team has been hit with budget cuts this year. Wait, okay. Please stay standing if your team contributes ideas and features to a product backlog from discoveries and research. Stand up, still stay standing. Okay. Third, please stay standing if you're stuck on how AI can help your teams. Okay. If you're stuck on how, okay. And last but not least, please stay standing if you've watched an episode of the DesignOps Aligned podcast. Okay. All right, with that in mind, please give a warm round of applause to our guests, Johnny Michaelsen, Laura Baker, Craig Perlmutter, and Inayaili León. I got it right. All right, so today's discussion focuses on aligning design ops with business impact goals through data-driven collaboration from strategy to impact. So, without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to start with this first question. What are the key data you think businesses are interested to show design teams' values? Who wants to go first?
I'll give this a go. It may not be the answer you want. I think the business wants a lot of data, but it doesn't really exist. So I think for me, I work in a fintech company as engineering founder, still the CEO, so everything is engineer-led. So everything's been grown from there. I think the data requirements has come through engineering into products. We're now faced with the same expectations, but the reality is that we cannot measure design and the work that we do in the same way. So I think that's the challenge, but the business is wanting that, so now we're faced with this strange reality of having to come up with metrics to prove our worth and prove our value. So I think there's a difference between the desire of what people want design to be measured on, and then the reality of what actually should we measure it on. I don't know if that kicks it off, maybe.
No, that's good. Who wants to take it next?
I'll grab it as well. Yeah, I kind of classic designer here. I almost want to rephrase your question a little bit. And I don't think the business necessarily wants data, it wants impact. And so it doesn't necessarily matter, because you can pick the data, right? But unless you understand the impact that you're actually trying to get, you're probably going to come up to the conversation earlier, like the vanity metrics, like that you're just going to pick data that you think is relevant. And actually what we need to do is really understand what impact they're looking for. and then you can find sort of the evidence to that impact and then define the metrics that are going to be relevant at the end of that. But if you don't start with impact, I don't think you're going to get what you need and what they need from it either.
So that's a really great answer.
Two things that came to mind when you're asking, so two areas that I think design can have an impact on, which is being faster and around efficiency, which is something, your question earlier about budget cuts, that everyone is trying to do the same or more with fewer resources. So we can have an impact around that in many ways, from reducing bugs post-ship, impact of the design system, the quality of the design system, and then there's the other side, which is the customer experience and the quality of that. So how exactly what the metrics are, then that depends. But I think design can prove a lot of value in those two areas.
I don't think I have anything unique to say in that respect. I think I echo what I was going to say, very similar, like post-live fixes, bugs, things like that, and reduction on that. We have some examples where that hasn't quite happened, and that's where at the moment we're looking at things like how can we improve our customer research in those areas, things like that, so that we're getting better data beforehand and what metrics through those kind of channels. I think that those are sort of real data, right? So I echo the sentiment of you can have these kind of artificial things, but it's really what is our speed to market and what is our accuracy when we do so? And sort of the more that we get it right first time, I think the better the outcome.
Let me take the point about impact. Do you think it relies on product managers to know the type of impact design teams are going to make? Or do you think it's up to design leaders to drive that education to product managers to understand the impact? I can see you already.
We may or may not be working on that. I mean, you can have things in a way where maybe there's a mandate from above that says, product, you must include design from the beginning and things like that. But ideally, you want product managers to have an incentive to want to involve design from the beginning, because, I mean, their incentive could be, I know that if I'm working collaboratively with design from the get-go, the result will be better, I will look better, I will reach my whatever business metrics are. Yeah.
Let's take that.
I can go.
Yeah, go for it, Johnny.
It's interesting how, again, I'm going to take the stance of we're at a disadvantage the whole time.
Yeah.
So, again, we're taking on the responsibility of educating our cross-functional partners in what is the value that we have? What is it that we do? And my favorite question is to a PM, when they ask me what I do, is to ask the same back. It's what do you do? Because they're just assuming that it's clear. I don't think it is, because a PM does many different things in many different companies. So as much as I think, yes, we should take the responsibility, because it is our job to help mature the understanding of design. I spoke with Annette earlier. I said something, I thought, this is genius, I'll say this on the panel. It's our job isn't necessarily to have this immediate impact right now. It is to kind of slowly raise the temperature of design maturity over the course of our career.
Yeah.
I think as part of that is that educational piece, but I think it's also in fairness to ask the same of our partners.
I think just to kind of build on that a little bit is, yes, obviously design has responsibility, but I think, it depends on the industry you're in, but I think it's actually a PD. It's a product design and engineering responsibility. I think it's a mutual responsibility to make sure that we all understand each other as that triad and how we can work together effectively, right? I don't think you should put ownership on one bit. I think it's as much, to Johnny's point, product responsibility to understand design and vice versa. Yeah. I think if you're not too careful, you'll end up with a little bit of removal of responsibility. And then by doing that, essentially, no one takes ownership. Yeah. So I think it's really important that that's very clear. And a really well-performing PDE is one that everyone understands each other's place, and they understand they have to work together to deliver.
Laura, do you want to chime in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, why not? Yeah, I was going to pick up a little bit on sort of the business metric thread and then kind of what you were saying around working together and kind of that thing. And I think going back to sort of the impact, I think sometimes it can actually be a little bit dangerous to have very specific design metrics as opposed to business metrics. And actually, I think, sorry, I haven't quite got the distance going around here. Actually, it risks not making you a part of it and actually siloing design off if you're not adopting the same metrics as other people in the business. And actually, if you can use the metrics that people actually care about, and you know they care about because they're already using them, and actually that means you're contributing to what they're trying to achieve as well. It creates more of that, to what you were saying, that kind of collaboration rather than being kind of segregated in some form or another. Yeah, your question was more about the product people, but I think it's all kind of encompassed within that, and it's not necessarily about. It's really difficult to say my contribution versus your contribution, because ideally, I think it's something that design kind of struggles with a little bit, is actually we've got to distribute, we want to kind of protect what we are and kind of own something so that we feel like this is what we own, this is what we're accountable for, and make ourselves sort of ring-fenced and important in a way. Yeah. But it's that balance between how we do that, but still share the mindset and share everything, and give away a little bit so we're not just seen as a little island by ourselves.
Johnny, wait, before you answer that, I think the reason why I went down this question, I wanted to ask this question, I think a lot of people sitting in this room, we've all gone through the same thing of having to show our value. You know, we go into these jobs and it's like, you know, we're already at the bottom of the scale where we have to show design's value. And we're now coming to a point where businesses are looking at the impact of teams to not make cuts. And I want to kind of put that point across. I think that's why I kind of want to kind of subjugate it around, do we always need to educate when we come into businesses? Or do we need to be more involved in the product backlog and say, hey, these are the things that we have researched and can bring return on investment? What's your take?
Sorry about that. I think to that point, I'll circle back to another point, but yeah, to that point, I think it's the design leadership responsibility, in my point of view, is that we're the ones who get involved in the cross-functional languages. There's a lot of talks about like how we need to speak the language of business, and I believe for design leaders, yes, we need to understand the language of business because we're here to pave the path for everyone else. But I think if you're talking to a senior designer, like, what a great way to beat out creativity of this person by, hey, you need to be able to talk about this in a business sense. It's like, no, you need to be a designer. Mm-hmm. Like, you will learn by, I'm showing you how to talk a business language over the course of your career, but like, I don't want you to do that now. So I think we have the responsibility of being more engaged with stuff we don't necessarily want to be engaged with. That's just the way the world works. It's like someone has to do it to pave the path for creativity. Yeah. I think to that point before, I think the education bit, I think it's this us versus the problem mindset that I keep talking about. So it's not us versus them. It's like, it's not design versus engineering versus product. It's like, what problems are we trying to solve, and figure out how do we solve that together. So like, if you just say, hey, it's us versus this problem, then you have a stage for collaboration.
Yeah. Sorry. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Okay, I'll move on to the next question. How are you monitoring, okay, let me take it in a different way. How are you monitoring your team's performance to see what improvements can be made to show better impact to the business? Who wants to go first with that one?
I think we're probably all going to talk about, I'm going to talk about something that I think is not what going to be mentioned elsewhere, right? Which is that one of the things we've been doing recently is looking at programs where we live in Figma, other tools are available, but we live in Figma, and I've been really thinking about like componentizing the ways in which our ways of working, basically, because through that you can drive analytics. So, for example, Laurent mentioned earlier about design crits, design reviews, things like that. It blows my mind to think that like we might have artifacts in another estate, another tool, or something like that you might do when that's where we live. So by building systems in that tool, I make it easier for people to work, but equally then I can create analytics. I can see how adoption is. I can see how many people have used that component and dragged it in and things like that. So that's kind of like, I'm sure there's lots of other answers, but that's something I just wanted to mention.
Okay.
Do you mean by teams, do you mean design teams or design operations teams?
Design teams. Let's focus in on design teams.
Yeah, I think one thing that just kind of came to mind when you're talking there is when I think about impact from an agency perspective as well, to kind of put a different spin on it. And I think there's an element of where do I think about sort of measuring the impact that my team has as a team going into another team as well, and the kind of layers there. And one of the first things that came to my mind was just feedback. And actually, like, it's really easy to kind of go into the quant and the data, and you kind of need that sometimes, but I think it's also the balance of the quant and the qual and getting that right. And actually some of the best kind of leading indicators is, like, yesterday, one of the clients turned around to me, it's like, oh, that person over there just said, like, the two of them, we run a workshop, and they were like, she just came up to me and she's like, they're absolutely fabulous. They've added more value in the last, like, 2 months than a lot of the kind of, I won't say, but anyway, than some other people, basically. And that, to me, is kind of as valuable because you're getting that feedback, and those little words and quotes, those things, if they spread around like a little bit of a wildfire, that can almost be as valuable. And if you can kind of capture some of that and share some of that, it can be just as good and as powerful as the numbers sometimes as well. So getting that balance.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly that. I think I was trying to think of basically how to say the same thing. It's usually, especially if you're thinking about leadership, and very senior leadership is impact on a specific project or helping with a specific workshop. And also in my company, we try to share a lot of demos and make people and designers particularly be very visible through that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's I completely agree. Yeah.
Let me go down a different route. With monitoring your team's performance, do you also think measuring their impact on how they work with product teams is important? And again, is it important about educating those product teams that they work with on the value of design? What's your take? So let me actually put it in a better way. So do you get your team members? So you were mentioning, Johnny, you don't expect your team members to speak the business language, but do you expect them to work with product managers and for them to start educating the value of design as they start to progress with those product teams?
As they progress in their career, yes.
Okay.
I would expect them to mature in their understanding of cross-functional responsibilities. And I think the challenging thing about going back to the us versus the problem thing is that, but then who is accountable? Because accountability is typically something that sits with product managers. But how do we take some of that accountability if we're not part of the right rituals, if we're not in the right meetings and stuff like that, if design periods are shortened down because the product development lifecycle isn't clear and therefore engineers jump to shipping without actually having finished the design process? Like, how can we be accountable for the design?
Yeah.
And the outcome of what engineers are building if we're not allowed the time to do that? So I think, again, product leaders will have more responsibility of like creating the environment, improving the environment of which design is done. Mm-hmm. But over time, like designers working through their careers, they'll start to pick that up, but only if they see good examples of it.
Yeah.
I think this is the difficult bit, is to be in enough places to show a good example, while at the same time also, like, I forget the talk, maybe Kim, drawing the circle around, like being the protective layer around design. Yeah. So yeah, there's like, we're a little bit everywhere, so we run out of capacity, so then we have to prioritize as well. So sometimes there's not enough, and then, yeah, designers end up not performing, but not necessarily because of their performance, but because the environment isn't optimized.
I think the only thing I just wanted to mention, if I remember the question now, is remember what design is there to do, and that is there to champion the user needs, right? Like I think about what I was saying there about everyone has a role, I guess, and it's being mindful about what the role is. So like a product manager's role is different in terms of they're looking at it kind of like a slightly different lens of how it might appear and how it fits in the rest of the product and things like that. Whereas a designer, there to champion the user needs, right? So they're there to help demonstrate how that journey, that design profile makes sense. Yeah. So it's just being keeping that in mind, so that when you're going for, and like Johnny said, it's a leveling thing, really. Like as a designer, as they might level up and stuff like that, you'd expect them to be able to argue that more and more, but that should be a constant thread throughout.
Laura, before you answer, I'll give you a lot of story that I heard. And I hear this quite a lot, especially during the podcast, and I hear from a lot from the UX designers. They work with product teams where development teams and product have already kind of designed it, and then they give it to a designer and say, go and put your UX touch on it. And I think everyone's kind of experienced that. You know, this is what I'm trying to get at. Do we, as design leaders, is it our strategy to start getting our team members to advocate design with product? You want to take Laura?
Possibly, but I also just wanted to challenge the last thing that you said slightly, sorry, and I will get the hang of this microphone at some point before the end of this conversation. I don't disagree in the sense of like advocating for the user needs and everything else, but I think there is an education piece. We do have to advocate it, but we also need to get everyone else to be, yes. We don't want to own it completely. We actually want everyone to kind of feel like they need to be advocates for the user, and then the role that we play, almost like facilitation between it all. So I just thought I'd say that. The question was around, do we as individual kind of ICs essentially, do we need to be educating for product people educating product people around the value of design?
Yeah, or do we want our team members that we kind of look over to start advocating the value of design as they start working with product teams?
I think that there's no harm in that, right? That the more people advocating, the better. I think it comes down to how you do that, and it's very much a kind of show, don't tell. And I think the more about the kind of you just tell people, they need to feel it, and they need to kind of see it and see the value in it. And if you keep kind of saying, we should be doing this, we should be working this way, and trying to push for change, that is really difficult to do, because quite frankly, if you're an individual product designer in an agile, cross-functional squad, you are, I was saying to this someone, as far as I'm concerned, you've been put there to deliver and feed the engineering beast for the most part. Mm-hmm. And so breaking that cycle and trying to change that and advocate for research is really difficult. I mean, when I was kind of consulting in-house, I had a team that we were building out, and we were trying to get more research into the process and trying to extend timelines or anything else to put research in there was virtually impossible. So I was a little bit sneaky, and I just said, right, next time you're doing your sprint planning, normally take on, I don't know, I'm making this up, 7 points, take on 4. Say things are going to take longer than they're actually going to, and that will then give you a bit of time to go off and do a bit of research. Mm-hmm. And so we can then play that back, and they go, oh, this is great. And we can go, if we can do more of this if you just let us do that. So you kind of need to show the value and show the change that you want, rather than just kind of talking about it. And then over time, it's kind of little win, but you can kind of keep opening and kind of wedging your way through that until it gets a bit more established.
That's a great answer. Do you want to? Okay. But then I want to tie. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
This mic is very warm. You have really warm hands.
Yeah, cheers, thank you.
Very self-conscious now.
if he was doing cover, you would have to have wipe it off before he passed the microphone. We've talked a lot about conflicts between design, PM, and engineering, and I guess if we are thinking about what does best practice look like, in your organization, in your career, where you've seen really good product design and engineering teams function really, really well and deliver impact, how would you characterize them? What was really good about them that you would want other teams to emulate?
Usually, it starts in the beginning. So, for example, to be very tactical, very specific, having really great kickoffs where everyone just starts the project together, roles and responsibilities are assigned, everyone understands what the customer needs that we're trying to deliver for, as well as the business need, and even though everyone is collaborating together, have an understanding of who is responsible for what, who has the ultimate power to, make a final decision. And that also, I've seen working really well, at least in my company, is when there might be, for example, one clear design leader, not necessarily the IC or ICs working in the project, that can make final decisions without having to ask 5,000 people, and person that is really trusted, and that the whole team knows that they can go to continue to move fast.
Who wants to take it next? Go, Johnny.
I saw this great talk earlier today. He had something about decision as part of a framework. I think if you have clear decision makers, regardless of who that is in the discipline, it just helps move things forward, because you remove the ambiguity of how do we decide what the next step is. It's like someone has to make a decision. If that role is clear, and if that role is played well in terms of going around the table, listening to the input of disciplinary experts, then I think anything could be successful, like small problems, big problems. I think unfortunately, the desire to be the decision maker sometimes is where we go wrong. As PMs, per default, their job is to make decisions. So they think that's their job across everything, which I would disagree with. So fighting for decision-making things is going to have the opposite effect. But yeah, if you have clear decision-making and the remit of decision-making, then I think, yeah, anything could be a success.
Laura.
I'm not sure I have too much to add. I suppose the one thing that I was kind of thinking about is you've spoken a lot, which completely correctly, around the kind of best practice and sort of the process and ways of working that come with best practice. And I almost think that there's an element of kind of contextualization to best practice, and ultimately it doesn't necessarily, to a degree, the ways of working, the process are really important, but going back to your kind of first question, it's the outcome and it's the impact. And as long as you're kind of driving that outcome and that impact, that's kind of the measure of good practice to a degree.
Cool. I want to switch up the conversation around continuous discovery, or I know. I was waiting for that one. Or the culture of experimentation. We'll let Johnny answer last, because we went back and forward on this one. But generally, about building a strategy to see the value of continuous discovery or the value of designers doing experimentation. I personally believe it brings a lot of value, but how can you translate that to businesses to see that it can bring a good strategy to the business? Who wants to take this one? Greg, go for it.
Yeah, I think we're going to be contentious. I think discovery is important. Mm-hmm. I think there's an important place for sprints and getting a design team together. I'm working on a couple of different models at the moment of design sprints, one being more like discovery, one being more like actually taking guidelines and trying to break them a bit and see if they apply to different areas. I think the bit I have a problem with is continuous. Just because I think if you're not careful, you never break out of discovery. So I think you've got to be really careful about how you apply that statement, because I think continuous discovery never ends. So I think it's applying it in the right point of whether it's a new product feature or whatever, and making sure that people understand the value, the impact of the thing you're going to do, and having a good sprint around discovery. But I wouldn't label continuous in that way.
Laura.
I'm gonna go to the other part. So you've just kind of gone on the continuous discovery. I'm gonna go with the experimentation side of it then, and like how we can start to kind of do that. And I think it goes back to, again, what we were talking earlier, that kind of like look for the really small areas that you can start with. Don't try and do too much until you have evidence and buy-in and you've been able to demonstrate something. And the other thing I think a lot of people miss is the opportunity to do internal work as opposed to the external kind of product work. And actually, sometimes to get buy-in to experiment on the product itself can be really, really difficult. There's a lot of fear around doing some things like that. I think where we've been able to kind of experiment and show value in terms of design and experimentation is with other teams within an organization, and just kind of going to them and going, right, what challenges, like we're working with the sales team in one client at the moment, and how we do sales enablement and help them hit their targets and approach a kind of design mindset to sales. And that's been a really good experiment because that's how we've pitched it with them. We're not stepping on toes, we're piloting it, we're trying a new approach. To actually get influence and buy-in for design, because again, going back to the other point, they can see the value because they've now been part of the process, they've felt the value of design and solving their challenge, and they then become an advocate and a case study for you to then go into a different part of the business and continue your kind of experimentation. So I think start really small, but find kind of internal challenges as well as the external product challenges if that's kind of, if you're hitting a bit of a blocker on it.
I love that answer, and I think you hit the nail on the head, because businesses that have been shown the value of discovery, let's take out the word continuous, but the value of discovery from designers, and as you mentioned, when you do start small, product managers do see the value, but they don't. The reason why I asked that question, and before you answer, is because there's not enough bandwidth to do experimentation with such a high velocity sprints, and we're moving so quick. There's no room for that. And so, as you just mentioned, we tried the same thing. We tried a little pilot, and it worked in the sense where product managers actually give some bandwidth for experimentation in their product backlog. So yeah, I just want to get your take as well.
Yeah, I don't think that I've ever heard the term continuous discovery, but
I just made it for this.
But on the experimentation, I feel like us as DesignOps teams and professionals can have a lot of impact on giving designers time back. So every place, every inefficiency, duplication that we can remove, and giving the meeting that they don't have to attend, anything like that, is giving time back for potentially experimentation. In my company, for example, there's been cases where a designer that was really upset with how a part of the product was working, maybe it looked really ugly or very distinct from the rest of the product, felt like they had time to explore, even without any project, just on their own, and imagine a better future for that particular pain point. It doesn't mean necessarily that a product manager is immediately going to pick that up in the next quarter or next month and put it in the product. But over time, there's been instances when there is an interest in doing that, those experiments that have been building up over time and are properly documented and are easy to go back and collect, then end up being part of the product, and everyone is happy.
Nice. Johnny.
Context is key, I think. Discovery is a well-known stage of product development. So like if we were saying we're continuing that stage, we're never going to deliver anything to anyone. So I think defining what the outcome of any discoveries, I think, is something that we can help with. Something I'm working on now, I've been working on for over a year, is like a general product development lifecycle that we can use across all disciplines. And the way I see it, the outcome of discovery is clarity of the problem that we want to address. And that is part of a product narrative. The accountability for that narrative sits with product manager, but it's contributed by every other discipline, like research, getting the right insights in to make sure that we have the foundation for understanding what problems to solve within the space that we're looking at. Designers to explore in whatever way we explore to build prototypes, test things early, quick experimentation, part of discovery. But discovery has to end some point for us to move forward. But the way to end it is to have a clear definition of how it ends and what the outcome is, and also what it leads to. Product narrative leads to a clear exploration of a solution where design can continue to design variations of that. Again, we can experiment as part of a solution stage, but discovery is now done. So yeah, continuous discovery is a trigger in context. Like you can have companies that like, well, continuous discovery is part of like how they work. And to some degree, we do some of that at Wise. We have a research loop, a research relay. It was like we can throw prototypes at it at any given time. We test it continuously, but like different outcomes come out of it, and we pick up different problems to solve. But that's a continuous part, but it isn't part of like a single program that ends up in the customer's hands. It's like part of testing.
Yeah. And I think, look, go for it. Do you want to answer your question? Do you want a mic? Don't take this one, it's too hot. It's clevery.
This works? Yes, this works. Yeah, I got a question and a reflection, a bridge on Laura's observation. As a designer, if you would be forced to work in HR, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to design stuff for HR. You're going to be an HRR, but you're going to be a designer too. And do they need design? Yes, they do. Mostly on internal stuff. But I did a workshop on design thinking. How might we create a better experience for the job interview? And there you go. We can do a lot of work on that. Yeah. So my point there is continuous research can be done in every angle and corner of the company. So as a business case, designers get the best value on products, and that's where we're talking about. But design operations can be actually, couldn't that be actually go cross business in every department? Depending on the scale of your company, you might not have a full task or even, but so would that be far-fetched to have in 2 years here, not just product/digital product and service designers operations, but also parts of HR and part of IT, like developers, because they also do research on their algorithms and on their frameworks, and that's research. They could do exactly the same as we do. So, I don't know, stretching out a bit the role of a designer in its core, but going throughout the whole company. So is this too far-fetched?
No. That's my really short answer. No, I don't think it's far-fetched at all, and I think it's where we should be going, quite frankly. And I think to say we've got design within HR, maybe not, to be honest. I guess it depends how you're structured. I heard about kind of decentralization, people going into business lines. If that's the case, then maybe we, in the same way that we have them in business line one around the kind of one of the product areas, maybe we do have them in HR. But from a more centralized perspective, I think you can have design that is going across the business. And I think actually, personally, with a service design background, I think there's so much opportunity in that. And actually, typically, design will sit, if you're potentially lucky, under a CDO, but maybe it reports into product, maybe it goes into tech. I'm seeing a few instances where it's going into the COO, for example. And I think it going into the COO, while that terrifies some designers, I think is an incredible opportunity for design, because it opens up a whole new world beyond just the product itself and the digital side of it, to go from a, maybe not so much from a product design perspective, but from a service design perspective, from an operations perspective. How can we take what we do in a digital sense? How can we take the design mindset and apply it to what's going on in the business, not just the services and the products that we deliver, but how we deliver it? How do we look at the operational efficiency, duplication, whatever it is, in terms of how the business works and operates? And so I would hope that's not far-fetched at all, to answer your question.
No, that's fine. I think there's one more last question before we wrap up, and I think it ties into this whole discussion about discovery, showing value. And one of the biggest things I always find whenever I speak to design leaders or heads of designs, directors, is actually getting designers or design teams to contribute to a product backlog, because it's always driven by product. But there's never ever kind of like design decisions that are driving some of the product features. And it's one of the common questions I wanted to ask you. Like, what would you think is the best advice for design leaders to advocate features into a backlog? Who wants to take that one?
I know we're pressed for time, so I'll try to be quick. In my specific company right now, the best way for us is to have research be part of those conversations. That's the quick answer, not necessarily product designers. Right?
Okay. Johnny?
I can go a different direction. So I think there's been a lot of talk over the past decade about design taking a seat at the table, like this imaginary table where things happen.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's the right thing for most companies, unless it's a very design-led company. But what I think is necessary is that the people who are at this table having these business talks, because that's what happens at the table, is that they understand the value of design, and they understand the value of design operations as well, for that matter. Because I think then it trickles down, because decisions are made with the right context and right information at the, again, this imaginary table, right? Mm-hmm. So we can get there without getting there, but again, it's through education and things that we're here to do in design operations, DesignOps leaders, is to make sure that education is like blasted out, a megaphone, right? So, yeah.
Nice. Craig?
I don't have anything to add, actually. Insights was going to be my point, so I think it's already been stated. Yeah.
Laura?
God. I would say, to not echo anything else and give a different perspective, is like, don't focus on the features and functionality, and don't focus on the backlog. Like, think, to the point about research, think bigger. Like, I think if we can naturally think about those bigger things and the influence and the impact and the outcomes, to go back to the first point of conversation, let your team figure out that. But as a design leader, I don't think you should be focused on the features and functionality. Set the conditions and whatever else, and then let the team get to those other levels, but don't be focused yourself on it.
Nice. I think we're done for time now. So thank you, everyone. Give a warm round of applause to our team.